Welcome to the Her Story Circle podcast, the podcast that brings you the extraordinary tales of everyday women who are changing the world. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and I'd like to acknowledge traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today. I also like to pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging. Every week, we dive into the lives, challenges, and triumphs of women from all four corners of the globe. We're here to inspire, enlighten, and connect, sharing stories that uplift and empower. So grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and join us as we explore the incredible journeys of women shaping our future. This is Her Story, where every woman's voice matters. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Her Story Circle. This is Gertrude Mache here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. And today I am graced with the presence of yet another fascinating young woman. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our tribe. Please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, and share your story with us today.
Really appreciate the opportunity to connect with everyone. I'm Veronique Ory. I am an intuitive movement and mindful awareness guide. I love yoga in every sense of the word, of connecting mindfulness in all that we do. And I'm so passionate about your mission of uplift of one another. That's very much in the ethos of my mission as I move through my own journey as well as a guide. I came from a theater background and have moved through different iterations of self, as many of us have. And I have come to really feel into an intuitive and creative way for myself to be in the energetics of what's happening, and how very much in the individual experience we can see echoes of that in the collective experience. And so have been really moved to be in that exploration, guiding international retreats and finding ways to connect in this on-demand and online community called Shine, which has been an offspring of my book, Shine on and Off the Mat, that I have woven in an interactive piece of mind meal themes like slow down and let go, these universal, timeless themes that we could be navigating for our entire lives, and having 20-minute practices that accompany it of meditation, a vinyasa style yoga class, and a yin stretch class, where very much we could be in that intuitive conversation within ourselves, and then also connect in community of ways that we can ultimately uplift one another through all of the seasons and transitions of our lives.
Okay, so you did have 10 minutes to share your story. Let me go into our Q&A. So what was the moment that you realized that women didn't need more fixing and that they needed more to atonement?
So this has been a really interesting journey. So I grew up, most of my friends in school were boys. And then when I went to college, I went to an all women's college, and there was a lot in the classes and on campus about empowering one another. And what's been so alarming really in recent days is there's so much messaging about I am enough, or I am deserving, or like fighting for equality, when actually the very nature that we were born is indicating that you are enough, that you are deserving. And so feeling into this as as a women's reflective, it's so important to look at the lens in which we are choosing to see what's happening, right? So it's like, if I'm orienting on I'm not receiving what's being offered over here, then that's the direction that I'm looking. However, there's so much vastness when we can sort of open up to all the possibilities. So if we believe that we're connected to the infinite, right? Our beautiful infinity symbol, where there's a continuation and we can choose again over and over and over, then we soften the edges. And what's so remarkable about that is the like gripping and the grasping and the fighting. That's very masculine energy. And so it's almost counterintuitive to feminine uprising of, oh, actually, like we're most in our power when we're in deep trust and surrender, when we're tapping into like a water kind of energy, a really fluid and trusting kind of energy, which isn't like put your hands up, like let go of the wheel kind of attention, but more it's we plant the seeds, we harvest, we trust that it's coming for us, with us, and maybe letting go of the timeline. We were talking before we hit record of these like, false urgencies that we can in entrepreneurship. It's like we get these surges of needing things to happen, yesterday. These impatiences that show up, and we feel like, oh, like I have to assert this so that I'm taken seriously. When I was in theater and we were working on a scene, and the obvious choice if you're fighting for something is to scream, right? Like you just like go to anger. And I had a director once suggest, like, what if you just got really quiet and you just got really pointed, like all of a sudden the audience leans in and is like, oh, like what's she gonna do? It's like almost more terrifying the quieter a woman becomes. Like, oh boy.
That is fascinating. And it's more about allowing things to come through and not pushing. And I think that's the thing that most of us do. We're trying to make things happen according to our time. It's like saying, if you plant a seed, you can't tell it to grow at a certain speed.
That's right.
It will evolve and become a tree or a flower or a plant in its own time. Not an easy thing to do. Now, I know that you talk deeply about the nervous system repair. Why is regulation the missing link in women's healing?
Oh gosh, this is so huge, and it's really prevalent in our conversation of the rise of autoimmune diseases, particularly in women, how for generations and generations, it's assumed that we're the caretakers. We tend to our children, our grandchildren, our partners, whatever the dynamic is. It's the home, and also, if we're working, it's all of that. And so, what is so important to highlight, because I think there's a lot of messaging in the spiritual realm of, oh, I have to fill up my cup before I can pour into others. And I really regard it differently. I think about what is regenerative, so that I think of that as waterfall energy, right? So it's like in the giving is the receiving. And so when you're aligned with souls that uplift, you're not opening the door and waiting for them to say thank you. You just open the door graciously. And if they say thank you, they do, but you're not, holding, anticipation for that to happen, right? That's like the same thing as, like you give a gift for whatever holiday that you're celebrating, and you're like in anticipation for the reciprocation. It's like in the giving is the receiving. And if you don't believe that, then there's a lot of inner attention that is beckoning, right? So if we're clocking there's incongruency in our interpersonal relationships, that is a really big sign of dysregulation, right? When we're kind of like seeking for approval, or we're like grasping for validation in these different ways. This is like a very common archetype of a woman thought loop, and kind of like a almost, it's like almost become like a comic book character, like waiting for the husband to come home, or like the partner to come home, like whatever, you know, the dynamic of relationship is, or like waiting for the phone to ring. And it's like that kind of graspy, needy energy is actually repelling of the thing that you want. Right. And so coming back to that energy of trust, and really that comes from, so so there's this duality, right? It's like I am whole as a person, just like we each are, right? So like the paradigm of like you complete me, I think we can agree is outdated. It's like actually like our wholeness, we come together and then we're elevating one another. And if that's not the case, then that's not a harmonious relationship, whether it's romantic or otherwise. And so the regulation is, it's something that I think is so important that we facilitate on our own, that we're not doing it in a codependent way, right? So that we each have our autonomy to live our lives. And also when we come together, then we are able to create magic. Then we're able to feel that much more love for ourselves and for others. And so the regulation, it's so individual. But in general, I think of it under the blanket of what are the nourishing things for you? So like everyone listening, it's like thinking of it like the clothes that you put on your body, the food and the drink that you choose to have, the thoughts that you choose to let play on repeat, the ideas that you are conjuring, right? Like all of these attentions, it's like, I think of it like, okay, so we're mostly water, right? So if you run each of those things through, it's like, does this make me constrict, or does it make me expand? So do I feel like ice with this, or do I feel like steam? And so I think it's such a great filter for all of it, right? It's like, oh, I could say yes to this invitation for this party, but it's going to make me feel stressed out because I'm going to have to make something, and then I actually have another party later, so I'm only going to be there for a little bit, and I'm going to be tempted to drink, and I'm trying not to drink right now. And, you know what I mean? Like we could like go through, like that's just an example, but I think that happens oftentimes, right? We're like so excited to get the invitation because it feels good to be invited, but what are we saying yes to? And so it's not on the surface, I'm saying yes to this invitation, but rather it's like, oh, am I saying yes to my regulation? Am I saying yes to something that feels nourishing to me? And if you're in open, pristine communication with people and they understand, okay, I really appreciate the invitation. However, I'm in this season of wanting to have space in the evenings, or, you know, whatever the loving boundary that you've set for yourself. Because when we're in this sort of like wishy-washy, or this like waffling of, so this is actually very important in terms of the mindfulness conversation, is like we might set an intention, or we might proclaim an affirmation, or we might be like claiming a certain word for the year, or however we're resonating with a certain elevated practice. But then if our thoughts, words, and actions aren't aligned with that, then the message to the universe, to God, whatever your belief system is, it's almost like you're, you know, doing this long distance drive and you're in between radio stations. You know, it's not a clear, aligned intention. So it's so important, not from a place of judgment or shame, but from a space of compassion and grace. It's like, okay, where are the ways that I'm sort of shrinking or playing small so that other people are more comfortable? So this is very common in the people pleasing, and I think very prevalent for women. It's like, oh, I don't want to disappoint them, or I don't want them to think that I'm high maintenance or, too picky or whatever. And maybe you're listening, you're like, no, I actually don't care what other people think. But a
So you're
lot of us,
constantly holding back. Yeah.
yeah.
So how does breathwork play? What role does breathwork play in moving from survival to an embodied vitality?
Yeah. So the breath is it's been talked about so much, and particularly nostril breath, breathing in and out through the nose as a way to be in the parasympathetic nervous system, this space of rest and digest. And this is where we actually stimulate digestion, not just of the food that we take in, but also the information. So,
Right.
what I've noticed at the point of trigger, and this is actually really important, is to take really mindful breaths in and out through the nose and create a
Hmm.
pause between stimulus and response. When we're able to
Right.
create the pause, then we can choose differently, right? I always joke with my clients, if you respond from a place of trigger, you're going to make the greatest speech you'll regret, right? Like you're like, "Brah, like I'll tell you, you know,
Yeah.
it's, but rather maybe just hand to heart. And sometimes if it's an email or if it's something that you can let sit, if it's like a charged
Wow.
kind of message, I really love
Yeah.
to sleep on it, allow for space. If I find like my breath is labored and I can't respond, like, so for example, if you're writing a message and you're like, not breathing, take a
Mm-hmm.
beat and don't send it.
Yeah. Yeah, that is
Yeah.
very good advice. I like that. Now, you guide women globally. What patterns do you see emerging from women in midlife right now?
hmm Yeah. So there's a lot of self-inflicted responsibilities and urgencies, like we've been talking about. And it's very weighty, right? Like I feel like what I've been hearing from clients is like, like I just feel overwhelmed and like kind of like meh, and they're
Yes.
like, I don't want to feel like this. Like I want to be inspired, but there's just kind of like a pressure.
Mm,
And I was sharing this morning with a client who was sharing this with me, and I said the greatest antidote when we're overwhelmed and where we're feeling that kind of like lethargic, like heavy energy, it's not
mm,
to push, it's not to just hurry up and get the things done.
yeah.
But actually, I've found, and listen, like I'm type A, like I'm like maybe like a lowercase a some days, but I love to check the boxes and do the things and color code my calendar and be very productive. But when I feel like I'm at that space where I'm like, oh, I'm in a space of forcing, and actually I need to be in a space of allowing, because that's when I know
Mhm.
I'm most magnetic and where
Yeah.
I'm most free. And so, what I've been practicing is stepping away from the things that feel overwhelming or weighty and actually tapping into creativity. So there's a lot written about like what are the things that lit you up at 10 years old,
Mm-hmm.
like before the programming kind of filtered in and you were kind of trying to figure out what you're going to do the rest of your life, like what actually brings you joy at your core.
Yeah.
And so I love that in terms of a creativity prompt where it doesn't have to be polished, like you're going to like open up an Etsy store and have customized jewelry for sale. In fact, if
Mm.
you're creative for the sake of being creative, that's even better, that you're not trying to make it
Make
be
something happen.
something. hmm
Yes. I like
So
it.
so it's like, maybe you decide you're going to pick up the guitar, or you're going to learn a new language. You've always wanted to travel to Italy, and wouldn't it be so wonderful to have a little bit of conversational Italian to show up with? Or maybe you just really love music, and you create your high vibe playlist, and you turn up the volume in your home, and you dance around, and you just liberate without needing it to be anything but just play and fun.
Oh, man. Now, can you share a transformation story from one of your retreats that shows what's possible?
Yeah. So what's so phenomenal, and this might be alarming to people, is time slows down on retreat.
Right.
That might be intimidating, but it's like the best possible thing. And by time slowing down, I mean, it's like there's this expanse of time. It's almost as if you're in some kind of trip of sorts. Not like you're on psychedelics, but there's like maybe just like a whisper of that, where there's just kind of like a cloud uplift,
Right.
because the home, the family, like the different various attentions, like all of that static is taken away. And what you're left with is a beautiful place to rest your head, where you don't even have to clean or make your bed if you don't want to. You don't have to think about the nourishing foods. It's created for you. And
Right.
eating of the land and we've often led our retreats where it's farm to table. So it's delicious food that's grown there. It's so flavorful, and you realize the love that's poured into it, you are taking in. And then the conversations around the table are so wonderful. When you're at a table with like-hearted souls, and you're able to connect in a way where you feel safe to be vulnerable. And
Yes.
it's like, oh, let's, go have a yoga practice over here. And oh, how about we meet at the pool in a little bit. And so it's just very fluid. And it's
Right.
not like, oh, okay, like here's the schedule, like boom, 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 like these like surges of stress of I want to make the most of my holiday, which we, tend to attract a lot of type A women that, want to sign all the waivers, and they want to experience the culture to the utmost. And you can certainly do that, but there's a different quality of it than when you're within your daily rhythm that is really transformative for people. And so oftentimes we're in the closing circle, and reflecting on, okay, what are you taking home with you? And
Right.
universally, it's silence in the morning. That's really grounding. Oh, like eating food of the land. Like, I wonder if I can find a local market where I can buy, fresh tomatoes from, this farmer in my town. Because it's different than, just going to the grocery store, and you're like, oh my gosh, this was shipped from Brazil. Like, how long has this been in transport for,
Right.
And so these different things, also having a daily yoga practice, when you can feel that in your being for 7 consecutive days, that's really powerful. And what's
Yes.
so what's so important to feel these things, you realize, oh, okay, if I'm able to feel this in this context, I actually could create this for myself at home. And so how am I going to actually recalibrate what my calendar is at home that supports the things that are uplifting and nourishing to me? And so that's what people have been doing, and they continue to come on retreat with us year after year, because then you go layers deeper, and then each time you integrate that, and then the family at home, they get brought in, and they feel like, oh, okay, this is actually something that I want to be a part of. that it's not, we're doing this 1 week out of the year and then the rest of the time we're doing, sort of status quo.
So, how does gut aware nourishment influence emotional well being and intuition?
I'm sorry, say that again.
How does gut awareness,
Oh, gut awareness.
aware nourishment, influence emotional well being and intuition?
So gut in terms of gut health, or like so more like gut instinct, like
Gut instinct, correct.
more intuition. Yeah. And it's actually both, right? When we think about the instinct. So for example, when you're tuned into this, if you're empathetic at all, I find like literally my gut is in pain. And I've had instances where I've been immobilized because I know that I'm sort of like fighting against instinct because rational brain is trying to take over.
Right.
And so that's so powerful. I've been feeling into that over the years, and my programming growing up was I never missed school. I was 100% attendance. That was my mother's pride, that even when I had mono, I never missed school.
Right.
And so when I first moved to Florida 7 years ago now, I had purchased my first home, and Hurricane Dorian was coming through, and we had to board up the house and bring in all the potted plants, and
Mm.
it was very stressful. And if you've never been through a hurricane, I had been through Hurricane Sandy when I lived in New York, but
Oh,
it was
yes.
it was different. Here it was like, oh, I don't know, maybe we'll lose our home and we'll all perish. Because the news made it seem so extreme. And
Yeah.
so we were holed up in our home for days and days. And then it was like everything opened back up, and I went back to teaching, but I was still in this sort of pressure cooker
Mm.
feeling. But I pushed through and I kept showing up to teach.
Right.
But my instinct was, I need to regulate. And this is, going off of what you were just asking me. It's like,
Mm.
oh, I can't continue to show up if I'm still vibrating at this frequency, right? But we get so sort of acclimated to, well, I made this commitment and I can't let these people down.
Yeah.
And so I remember I was teaching this one hot vinyasa class at a local studio, and I'm walking around, and then all of a sudden I just felt all of the blood drain out of my body. And I
Yeah.
backed up to the back wall, and I just slid down the wall. And I
Mm.
remember in real time thinking, thank goodness I have the facility to guide without needing to demonstrate the poses. So I was just continuing to verbally cue from the back of the room, and I was on the floor. It was like I had sea legs. I couldn't stand. And so I guided everyone through to the closing sequence. And then I finally got my facility, and I started, guiding people back in. And then days went on like this, where I just was pushing and pushing. And I think this is just so important, because I think a lot of people can resonate of we push and push and push because we think that we need to. So
Yeah.
what ended up happening was several days later was teaching a class at a different studio, and I was just almost offhandedly telling one of my students, yeah, I've been having this really significant stomach pain.
Mm.
And I think a lot of women can relate to this, because we tend to hold our resistance to our instinct in our stomach. And so when we're clued into that, it's like an actual physical pain. It's not just
Yeah.
emotional anymore. So she said, maybe you should see someone. And so I went to the urgent care thinking I'll just stop there and then I'll go to my next class, because in those
Right.
days I was pinballing all over town, teaching classes everywhere. And
Mm.
so he said, you need to go to the emergency room. And I said, oh, no, I'm on my way to another class. I'm not available for that. And he says, you should go to the emergency room right now.
Okay.
And so I went, and it turned out I had gastritis, which is inflammation of the stomach. And I had to go to a
It
gastroenterologist, and
was more
it,
serious than you thought.
it was very serious. And
Yeah.
it took the better part of the year for that inflammation to go down. I went through a very strong Ayurveda journey with a coach. So Ayurveda, if you're not familiar listening, it's the sister science to yoga. It's thousands and thousands of years old. It's very intelligent. And what I really love about it
Mm.
is it really guides you to nourishing yourself in what you're putting in your body and on your body. And it very much is, I think, something that each woman should look at what their dosha is, so that you know that you're eating and drinking and putting the things on your body that are in harmony with your specific metabolic type.
Mhm.
And so once I
Wow.
started to learn about that, this definitely parlays into that nervous system regulation. It's like, oh, like once I'm regulated, then I can better attune to what my instincts are,
Mm.
because we have like this old programming. And so we can't help but run things through like, oh, I'm responding because I have my mother's voice over here, or I'm responding
Mhm.
because, I'm expected to show up in this way here. But it's
Mhm.
like hand to heart, eyes closed, without the outside influence. What is the instinct?
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Just
so
going
it's
back
a,
to that. So,
mhm.
so let me finish off with this last question. How can women begin cultivating intuitive movement, even if they feel disconnected from their bodies?
That's thank you for that question, because I think it's elusive. So I'll often say, do the moves that move you, right? Which, what does that mean? If you've ever been to an ecstatic dance event where people are their eyes closed and they're just kind of like flowing in movement, that can feel very stressful and uncomfortable for a lot of people, not just women. And so what I think what's so important is to connect into a modality that feels resonant for you, right? It's so good to have a foothold into something that you are able to connect with personally. So maybe it's you're really connected to nature, or you have a certain genre of music that you really love. And so what I love to do is have the music or the nature to be as inspiration. So I'll host specialty events often where it's less about being a dancer per se, or even, being good at moving the body. If it feels awkward, we want to come into a space where it feels fluid. So I really love playing with the lunar cycles, with the senses, with the different elements, and
Mhm.
allowing those to be influenced. So we're not so aware of, okay, I'm going to, move a shoulder, or I'm going to move my head in a certain way, but rather we're perhaps in the example of letting nature inspire, where we might have feet on the ground witnessing how the sea is moving. And then we
Mhm.
could just kind of like gently sway with the water. And then maybe it's
Right.
like, okay, just connect into the sense of of smell. And then it's like, oh, like there's
Mhm.
this like really beautiful fragrance of sea. And now I'm just kind of like a bit in a trance, and like a hypnotic state of movement that is actually connected to nature, and we can't help but be connected. It's almost like an illusion, right? That we're separate of it. And so that's a really great way to come into it, to find that there is a pathway for each of us
Yeah.
to have an orientation to it, and then it becomes freeing, and like everything, right? Like the more that you practice, the more that you're in the conversation, then it'll just
Yes.
start to become a part of you. I
Yeah.
love
It's
how
like a
in many
muscle.
exactly,
The more
yeah.
you use it, the stronger it gets, and the stronger it gets, the more you use it. I love that.
Hmm.
Thank you so much. Well, thank you so much for coming online and sharing your nuggets of wisdom with our community today. It's a
Thank you,
real pleasure
Gertrude.
and an honor to have you on the show. And I just love the way that you are guiding women to trust themselves, to tune into their bodies, because we do have all the answers to everything we need, but a lot of us have forgotten how to tune back in
Hmm.
for your work. And thank you to everybody who tuned in today. The Her Story Circle is more than a podcast. We're a social impact movement that brings you the stories and voices of women from all over the world. We share these stories to uplift you, to inspire you, to energize you, but most importantly, to take you from where you are now to where you're trying to go. Today, Veronica was sharing ways that you can reconnect with yourself. Go back to using your intuition. I had her website at the bottom of the screen. So if you need support, you need some help, reach out, go to one of her retreats and recharge yourself for 2026, which is just around the corner. Thank you so much, Veronique. I'll be back
Mm.
tomorrow, everybody.
Thank you so
Have a,
much, Gertrude.
have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world, and bye for now.
Mm.
Thank you for tuning into the Her Story Circle podcast. I hope today's story has inspired you to believe in the power of our stories and the difference you can make in the world when you use your voice. I'm Gertrude Mache, and it's been an honor to share this space with you, where voices from all walks of life come together to weave a rich tapestry of diverse perspectives. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast to help us share these stories with more listeners. Follow us on social media by looking for the Her Story Circle podcast for more updates. And join us tomorrow for another episode filled with courage, resilience, and empowerment. Remember, your story matters, and together we're building a stronger, more inclusive world. Until next time, keep making her story. Thank you so much.